Welcome to another episode of The Latest with Maya. Today, I am so excited to have a conversation with writer Craig Thomas. Craig created How I Met Your Mother along with his writing partner, Carter Bays. He is also a part of the band The Solids. Thank you so much for being on my show. I'm so excited to be talking with you.
I'm so excited to talk with you, Maya. I'm a fan of everything you do here. I'm honored. You've talked to everybody. You've talked to more famous people than I've ever met, I think, and I've been in the business for 25 years. So you're very impressive what you do in your show. So thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
Of course.
Um, so who in your life has had the biggest impact on how you choose to live?
Boy, what a good question. It's like I have a different answer for different eras of my life in a way, but I would say that I think I'm a writer because of my parents. My mother and father are both really good writers and readers and appreciators of the written word and literature. My mother went back to school when I was like a teenager or preteen to become an English teacher because she just loved books so much. And I was growing up, and she had been like kind of a stay-at-home mom, but always politically involved, always doing things that involved writing. And then she decided to go teach literature to kids. And I was this little bookworm writer, wannabe nerd teenager. And I saw what she was dedicating her sort of next chapter to. It was books, it was words, it was writing. And so that definitely made me consider the power of words, right? And then my father, on the other hand, he was an advertising writer. I saw that you had John Hamm on an episode of your show.
Yeah.
My father, while not John Hamm, no one would mistake my father for John Hamm. My father did work in advertising during that era. Like he came up in that kind of Mad Men era. My dad was an advertising copywriter and then like creative director, had his own ad agency, and I think was, doing essentially the job that like Don Draper was doing on Mad Men. And so my dad was a writer. He wrote for a living, albeit in this completely different realm of advertising. He wasn't involved in like TV or film but he always on the side was writing short stories. He was trying to publish those. That didn't really take off for him, but he was really successful and well respected as an advertising writer. So I had these two different sort of wordsmithy people. And my dad also like when he married my mom, he said, "I'm dead broke." They were in their 20s. "I have no money. I have nothing to offer, but I have about 300 paperback books on shelves." His whole worldly possessions were books. And sure enough, he took all of those books and put them in like this home office in our house on Long Island where I grew up. So my whole childhood, there was like this library, like wall of books in this little office my father had. Like our very modest middle class home in Port Washington, Long Island. But it was sort of like we didn't grow up with religion. I wasn't religious or anything. My parents didn't raise me religious. But if there was a religion, it was probably books and words and literature, and that was like the shrine to books was like these 300 books that he'd accumulated in his 20s. So I'd say they're why I'm a writer, probably the two of them in their different ways, my parents. So I guess I'll give them the shout out in that answer.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw you interviewed John Hamm recently. I'm a big fan, but one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of him is I feel like he starred in a TV show that gave me a window into like my father's life. My father would have been like one of those junior writers that like worked for Don at that age, like that particular year in like the early 60s, whenever that show was supposed to be. But I loved that show in part because I was like, this is like showing me my father's 20s on television in a way. And he would even watch it, my father, and he would say, yeah, they name dropped a bar we all used to go to for our, three martini lunches. Had how the hell they did that and survived to tell the tale. That's a lot of martinis for lunch. But
Yeah. I
but
love
yeah, so
Yeah, yeah. I interviewed John Hamm during COVID in 2020.
oh, that was a little ways back. Okay, I was looking
Yeah.
at a bunch of the different clips and stuff before I came on,
Oh
and I
yeah.
wasn't sure when that happened. That was great. I watched a little bit of his interview. I couldn't tell what year.
Oh,
For some
thank
reason, I
you.
couldn't tell what year it was.
Oh yeah.
That's cool. It's so cool that you got him to do that. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Yeah, that one was, I mean, I always, everybody, I talk to, I'm always so excited about. And yeah, I was so excited to talk with him. And
He's
yeah.
great. I'm a
Um,
fan.
so, what inspired you to create How I Met Your Mother?
That was definitely a write what you know situation. So my next, another big influence on me beyond my parents is that I went to college and I met my writing partner in TV stuff and some movie stuff, Carter Bays, who is just an amazing writer, so creative, so just such a big idea guy, such like he's very courageous in his sort of pitching of huge swings, crazy ideas, and he was just a very inspiring person to be around. In college, we were in a band together, and he was the lead singer and I was the drummer. It was like a 9-person soul band. We all wore these cheesy suits. We had a horn section. We played Otis Redding and Sam and Dave, all this 1960s soul from the Mad Men era. And we were like this cheesy band at our college, but we played good songs. Like those songs are great. You can't mess up those songs that badly. And when you have a horn section, it's pretty good. But Carter was the lead singer and I was the drummer, and we were separated by like this like it was a 9-person band. I'm not sure he could even see me. He didn't pick me out of a lineup behind the drum set. We weren't like close friends, is my point at that point. But then we started writing stuff together because we got the same internship between junior and senior year of college in New York, working for MTV like series development department when they were like first developing scripted and like show stuff beyond music videos. And we clicked and we started writing stuff together that summer, songs and comedy and scripts and stuff. And it sort of was a life altering event. And then when we became writing partners. We wrote for Late Show with David Letterman in the late 90s into the early 2000s. And then we moved to LA because we wanted to tell longer stories, narratives. Like we wanted to work on a sitcom and hopefully create one. And when we got the opportunity to write our own version, we went with the old adage, write what you know. So How I Met Your Mother really came from at that time in our lives. Carter was still single, kind of looking for the one, looking for who is he going to marry and have kids with. Whereas my wife and I also met my wife in college at Wesleyan University. Great school. I'll shout it out. I met my writing partner and my wife there, so that was really worth the price of admission right there. And so my wife and I were kind of like the Marshall and Lily, the Jason Segel, Allison Hannigan characters, because we were like the old married couple by our mid 20s. Like everyone else was single and out and doing crazy stuff. And like my wife and I would go to like a B&B in Connecticut for the weekend. And we would act like we were 65 years old and everyone else was like 25 acting 18. And it was just like, it just struck us as very funny, the two different worlds we were both in. Our lives were so similar. We had the same job. Carter and I even lived together for a couple of years, going to the same job as roommates too, which is how did we not murder each other during that point? Um, but we had such similar lives that were also like vastly different. Sort of once the workday ended, where I was like this old married couple kind of guy, and he was the single guy. So that was really the spark for the characters in How I Met Your Mother. That was like the first initial. That was like, well, we know we can write about that because that's kind of our life.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if you're trying to do it's a write what you know is a good rule for writing, although making stuff up that you completely don't know about is also wonderful. But specifically in TV, where if your goal is to do 100 episodes, in our case, we got to do 208 episodes of How I Met Your Mother, starting from material you really know very well and have something to say about, and having characters, or at least at first based on you and change over time, but you can always go back to some core of like yourself and the character. That's really helpful when you're talking about maybe doing it for almost a decade, which is what we did. And of course, we had no idea it was ever going to go that long. But if you're trying to make a long-term TV series, seems like a good idea to know to write what you know in that context as much as you can.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, How I Met Your Mother, I remember at the start of the pandemic and lockdown, like
Yeah.
that was all I watched.
I feel like we would interact sometimes on like Twitter before it was terrible. And I feel like, right, we were like, well, I feel like we interacted before we've ever met. Today we get to sort of meet face to
Yeah,
face through a screen. But I feel like
yeah,
we interacted and I was like, oh, Maya seems really cool. And I knew a little bit about your story and everything you had been through and what you were doing. I always thought you seemed really cool, and I was very inspired by everything you were doing. So I'm glad we sort of went from Twitter friends to like now we're actually meeting each other kind of through
Yeah.
a screen. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad the show helped you during that time because that was a really dark and really hard time. You've been through your fair share of challenges, so I'm sure you were prepared more than the average person to like weather the storm.
Yeah.
But the we heard from a lot of people that How I Met Your Mother made people feel less lonely during that time, and it was a comfort show. Look, I mean, we're still living here in 2025 in some scary times, and I'm hearing it again. I'm hearing another wave of people saying like, "This is a comfort show for me. This
Yeah.
is helping me right now," and that's a great feeling. I love that. I love
Yeah.
hearing that, even though I wish the world wasn't so scary that you had to turn to your comfort show.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's there for people if it helps them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, one of my really close friends and I we had known each other for a few years, but then we like also um we bonded over our love of How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, I'm so happy.
So
That's awesome. Did you really discover it during the pandemic? Like you didn't know about it too much before. That was like when you dove into it? Or
no, I had like I watched it all like a few years before and I like went and like
oh,
rewatched
okay. So it
it.
was a
But
rewatch. Okay. Oh,
yeah,
I'm honored. I'm
yeah.
honored you were into it for that long. But that's awesome. I'm glad you and your friend. You and your friend clearly have amazing taste. What can I say?
Thank you. Um, so if you had a warning label, what would yours say?
For myself or for
Yes.
my work? For me.
Yes.
Like if I had it somewhere on my body that was like a warning,
Yeah.
that's a hilarious question. Number one, great question.
Thank you.
Um, I think mine would probably say it would just be warning, and then it would just say intense. That was always the word my mother used for me, even as a child. She's like, "You were an intense child." And I think it's like a relatively nice way of sort of encapsulating all of the good and bad of being intense. I'm very intense. If I have an idea, I'm like a dog with a bone. I will be very intense about making it happen, and that can be good. I can also be intense in my anxiety, in worrying about things often that I can't control. But then I have this other kind of intensity that's sort of like I'm going to power through. I'm going to make things happen or I'm going to try to do, try to make things happen that I want to happen, or I'm going to do things I believe in. So I'd say that intense would be, I feel like that would be the word. I just, every now and again, my mother will say to me, "You are an intense child. You
Yeah.
are very serious." And I have my daughter, Celia, is 9, and she's also intense. She's like this, she's can be so funny and silly, but when she works, she writes books. She's written like multiple books. She's been like my little she calls us super writing buddies because we sit and like write together. So I just finished my first novel and it's coming out in November. I want to plug it. Yeah, I'm really proud of it and I'm excited about it. It's called That's Not How It Happened. And it's a comedic novel about my journey, kind of inspired at least at first, or in part by my son, raising my son who has a disability and sort of the journey of that and sort of about a family, a little bit like my own, kind of going through that journey. But it's a comedy and it's about all 4 members of this family. But I can talk more about that or not at all more about that. But I'll just say that my daughter, Celia, sat and wrote several books while I wrote my one book, graphic novels at first, and then she switched to prose, and she's like writing these elaborate stories at like age 8, age 9, and sometimes I look at her and I go like, she's also kind of intense, kind of like me, but kind of in a good way. She's just like she has a vision and she just does it. And I loved it. I don't think I would have ever finished writing my novel if it weren't for like her focus and dedication at age 8, basically sitting there next to me. And intense can be good, but it can also be like, let's turn down the intensity on the worry part of it and the
Yeah.
anxiety part of it, and just keep the intensity on the productivity part and turn down the other. For some reason, it's hard. They're sort of like weirdly intermeshed, those two things, but
Yeah.
for me at least. But but yeah, I think that would be mine.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
What would yours be, Maya?
I think I'd need several. I think I'd have one my mom came up with that I would need one that says prone to anxiety, don't overload.
Yeah, yeah, I think I could share
And
that one.
yeah, yeah. And then I think I'd have will like obsessively like talk about pop culture and then
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then also will unintentionally stop listening. So
That's really funny. Unintentionally is a good word to add there. You're not being rude when you do that. It's just
yeah,
unintentional. You'll drift off a little bit in the
yeah,
middle of. I am have all of those things. Every single one of those could also describe me. And I'll also point out that your love of pop culture, you have again, like how intensity can be bad and good. You've done gone the good way with your obsessive love of pop culture and
yeah.
made this unbelievable thing, this your show starting in a children's hospital and now extending on this whole journey you've been on. So I'm going to go ahead and say that that's a good warning. You turned that warning into a win. So
Yeah.
well done. That's the key in life. Can you turn your warning into a win?
Yeah.
That's the key. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it can.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, thank you.
totally.
So, what three words best describe you?
Well, I just said one of them, intense. I guess I'll stick with intense. Um, but then I think I'll move off of intense to a word I've really embraced with my children, which is silly. Just the having kids is said one of the great things about having kids is it just makes you take yourself so much less seriously. It's just you have to be I just try to be a clown for them. I do stupid dad jokes and stupid puns. I will do bits, I will do songs. I have 3,000 nicknames for my two children. They each have 3,000 nicknames each. And even they, my kids, will sometimes just look at me and go like, "You're crazy. You're a ridiculous human being." And I'll be like, "Great. I love it. I love that you think that of me." Um, because yeah, we don't, my dad was like sometimes silly and playful, but he was also very, very serious at times. And I was just like, I want my kids to feel like there's a playful vibe as they're growing up, and so I'm very happy they think of me as silly and ridiculous. Um, and what would one more be? I would say musical. I love playing music, drums and guitar. I love playing with people live, like in the band. I love writing music, co-writing music with people. Carter and I co-wrote all the silly songs on How I Met Your Mother. We wrote all those together, or one or the other of us would trade it off a little bit. And my son, who again he has a disability. He has a rare genetic deletion, and he had open heart surgery. And when he was 2 weeks old, his life, our journey as parents began in a children's hospital, in Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and he went through this, life or death sort of like surgery and struggle, and came out of it. And he has, lifelong learning challenges and different health challenges, but is also this wonderfully happy, silly, funny, warm guy. And his superpower is music. And so I've had such a connection with him playing music. I taught him drums over the pandemic, right? We all needed to not go insane during lockdown. I
Yeah.
taught him drums, and we basically started our own little two-man band. And we connect so much over music. And he's gotten up and played drums in my band. I've gotten on the guitar, and he's played with like adult, some of them professional musicians. And he's really gotten so good at drums. I'm so proud of him. So that musical part of me, I was always like, I never did it quite professionally. I would always like sneak a song on How I Met Your Mother. We do this. It was always like a side thing. But in some ways, it's become such an important part of my identity because of my son, because of how much we've connected over music. So I would say that would be my third word,
Oh, I love
musical.
that.
I really share that with him. It's been like, I mean, not unlike what you've done, where you've taken your passion and, something that you loved and that helped you get through a hard thing. Like music has always been that for me and for Elliot, my son. So that's an important thing to have, right, Maya? You know that.
Yeah,
What is your
definitely.
joy that gets you through the ups and downs, right? And
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I
yeah.
love that. Yeah. Um, yeah, I love yeah, writing song lyrics and
Do
I
you do
can't
that? I didn't know
I,
you did that.
Yeah, I can't play any instruments, so actually set them to music, but
But you write lyrics.
yes.
Do you have a musician you can pair with and put
Yeah.
and make songs? You do?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we've actually released a couple songs.
Can you send me that after this? I want to hear
Yeah.
it.
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely. I would love to hear what you think.
totally. That's amazing. Does your friend sing? Is that a singer too? And
Yes. Yeah,
piano, guitar? What is it?
yeah, yeah, she sings, she yeah, plays uh different instruments and she produces.
So cool.
Um,
Man, Maya, you're a multi-talented lady. I really you do a lot of cool stuff. Well
oh,
done.
thank
I didn't know you
you.
also were a lyricist. That's very cool.
Thank you.
The funny thing is with me and writing lyrics, even though I'm a writer, I'm much more comfortable writing silly, ridiculous lyrics like "Let's go to the mall" or like really ridiculous stuff. You did how I met your mother, best night ever. And then like when I have to write a serious song, I get very nervous because I'm like, I'm not really a poet, I'm not a lyricist. And I've gotten courageous enough to do it a few times. But it's funny when I collaborate as a songwriter, I almost always I'll bring the music and the melody, and someone else will write the words, like my friend Andrew or Carter. And sometimes I feel like I got to get a little more courageous in writing non-ridiculous songs. But I've done a few of them.
I love that. Yeah, and I love just songs that are just like silly and just that you can
Those
and
are also
are
the best.
also they're still so good. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is a lot of, here's the key to writing a silly song. You have to take it very, very seriously. I think that's the key to writing a silly song. Like writing, we wrote that song for like Robin Sparkle's breakup song, Sandcastles in the Sand.
yeah.
I swear to God, I was like moved to tears as we were writing that song. I was like, we really were trying to like feel the emotion of writing this breakup ballad. And yes, it's ridiculous, but there was like something. That was the moment I realized like the key is to really try to write a song that almost holds up as a serious song. That's the key to writing a silly song, is to be very serious about it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love right I've had a couple songs where I put like a lot of pop culture references in
Yeah.
them, and there was one that I was like my mom and my sister, like we all kind of brainstormed together and I wrote this song with all these references, and then I brought it to my friend and we kind of like fixed it up and then released it.
I
So,
want to hear it. I want to hear it. Send it
okay.
my way.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I would love to hear what you think. Yeah, that song is called Romanticizing New York. Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, How I Met Your Mother could have fit into that one. If it's not in
Yes,
there, it could have.
yes,
We'll make it into part two. You'll write part
yes,
three.
yes, definitely.
That's really
Yeah.
funny. God knows we did a lot of romanticizing of New York on that show. So
Yeah.
I relate to you on that level as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So what, no matter how many times you see it, always takes your breath away?
Oh wow. Like in the world of art or TV or film or anything like that, or just in life? What
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
yeah?
Anything that comes to mind.
Oh man. Well, I'm gonna pay you a compliment because I think what one thing that really that does that for me now. So my son Elliot is 18, is going to be 18 basically in a week. And so this world of like the disability community and people who have different challenges and work to overcome them or find meaning in the challenge, right? So I've met some people, and there's an element of this in my novel actually that I've met people who have made amazing, just created amazing things because of being parents of a child with a disability. I'll give you two examples. One is my son, when How I Met Your Mother ended, we moved back to New York City. That's where I live now, romanticizing New York every day. And we he's an interesting learner because he has like all of these strengths, but he also has some real challenges as a learner. Fine motor skills, handwriting, some all of that stuff's like very hard for him. And then he's an amazing drummer, which is like music is magic. It's a you can't be explained by science. There's something about music that, but so he has different challenges. And we found this school in kindergarten for him. Now he's 18 almost, basically. He's been in that school since kindergarten to now, and it's called the Ideal School of Manhattan in downtown Manhattan. And it's created almost, 20 years ago. My son's been there for like half their life now, basically. Um, Created by four moms of four young children with Down syndrome, who the mothers all felt like there wasn't a just right school for their kid. They said our children are these unique atypical learners. They have real strengths. They're very social, but they have these different challenges, and they were seeing their kids not fit into stuff, right? They could just tell it wasn't the right fit. So they created a school that would be the right school for their children. They just created a just right school for their children, and then to welcome in all these other different children, atypical learners and stuff. And it turned out, and they were, 8 or 9 years into that when we showed up. And then my son's gotten to be part of this amazing journey. And just like that takes my breath away. That just blows my mind when people take the challenge and then create something amazing to solve, or to create some kind of solution to the challenge. And those four mothers that created the Ideal School, those families, they did that. A couple years ago, I also met these amazing people. My wife and I have a house in the Berkshires that we spend a lot of time up in Massachusetts. It's like very beautiful up there, hills and woods, and it's where we lived for the pandemic because my son is immune compromised. So we lived there for a whole year. My daughter like went to preschool up there, and I met these people who have a son with a disability who grew up into adulthood, and they felt like there wasn't a great place for him to work and be part of, community and have kind of like meaning and purpose. They just didn't see that for him. And so they created a coffee shop up there called Extra Special Teas, a tea house, really. It sort of specializes in teas, Extra Special Teas. And it's so successful. They created it for their son, but they have it staffed almost entirely with people with different disabilities. And it was so successful that now they have two of them up there in two different towns of the Berkshires. And Scott and Cherry Sands are their names. And they, again, like they saw a problem, they love their son so much, and they created something amazing to solve that problem. And I'm telling this whole long story about those two sets of people, Ideal School and Extra Special Teas, that take my breath away. Because I also sort of wrote about that as part of the story and kind of background of what's in my novel, because I'm just so inspired by people that can take the challenge, survive the challenge, and make meaning with the challenge. And I'll bring it back to a compliment to you, which is that's what your show is, right? That's what you're doing too, I think. That's how I see it. I don't know you that well, but I can tell. I feel like it's the same thing where you had various challenges and you said, I'm going to hold on to the thing I love. I'm going to start making something I love. And that always inspires me. That takes my breath away. So well done. I'm going to include you in that. That when I see that, it really takes my breath away.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, honestly, it's a real, I mean it 100%. So
Thank you so much. Um, so what is something you have accomplished as an adult that your younger self would be proud of?
well, I would say that my very intense younger self would be pretty happy with. So as a teenager, I wanted to write for my dream job would have been writing for David Letterman because I loved David Letterman. It was one I would have wanted to write for maybe Cheers or a few things I wanted to write for, and I did get to write for David Letterman. And then I loved the show Cheers, and I said, and Carter and I both grew up loving that show, and we both said, "Well, if we ever get to make our own show, let's make a cool show with a cool bar." And it'll be like our version of what we grew up watching. And we got to do it. So there are a few things I got to do that I think my teenage self would be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you actually pulled that off, dude. Are you gonna go be an astronaut too? Like like you want to do when you were 5?" So a few of those things I actually got to do, but yeah, I would say that like probably my younger self would be also very proud of my kids, just like having a home life with my kids where my kids feel happy and safe, and they know they have two parents who are like there for them, like in some ways like that. I think as a kid, like my parents divorced when I was a teenager, and it was sort of like a lot of ups and downs and different things. I'm also like I think my childhood self would be like, hey, it's cool that it's cool that you have these kids and they sort of feel like safe and there hasn't been too much drama aside from things like the pandemic and everything else falling apart in the world. Sort of the stability of sort of feeling like there's a nice place for my kids to grow up. I think that's probably the deepest part of all.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So which writer do you consider to be the gold standard when it comes to storytelling?
Wow. I mean, there's different writers in different genres, but yeah, I mean, I would say that for like writing How I Met Your Mother, huge influence was that show Cheers. That you know, it sort of looks like an old show now. By the way, How I Met Your Mother looks pretty old now. I'm rewatching because Josh Radner and I have launched a rewatch podcast, and we're watching, season one, episode by episode. We're kind of talking about each episode. And it's so funny. People take out their cell phones and they're like these old big flip phones, and there's like there's all these things that feel so dated. So Cheers is even a whole sort of generation before that. I was when I was a teenager. It was like the late 80s into the 90s. And but that show, it's a show about a bar, but really it's a show about this sort of like impromptu family that's created at this bar. And the way that show could blend like really emotional, heartbreaking moments at times, and they did it very sparingly with just laugh out loud comedy that very much came from character. No one character could say another character's line. That was an amazing thing about Cheers. The characters were so defined. Sometimes you could watch a sitcom or any kind of movie comedy, and you're like, several of these characters could have basically said any one of those lines. You know what I mean? The lines aren't coming from character. There isn't that amazing chemistry. And I think that show really inspired both Carter and I to try to write these characters as distinctive as we could on How I Met Your Mother. And just it's that thing in the back of your head, like you're always comparing yourself to your heroes. And I would say Cheers was a really big one for that. I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I remember just to do something a little more contemporary to kind of that was on, and we cast Allison Hannigan off of that. And what I loved about that show was its daring to be so different episode to episode. There were comedic episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There were incredibly like sad, heartbreaking things on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and deaths not from vampires, but from illness, from like there was heartbreaking things. And and then there would be like totally campy horror episodes and like crazy big sci-fi fantasy episodes. And in some ways, we tried to do that on How I Met Your Mother, where one episode could be so different from the next. And the other huge influence in that just tonally is Quentin Tarantino. I think Carter and I are both huge Quentin Tarantino fans, and just like the chopped up narratives of Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, and the sort of like doling out of information by structuring this narrative in these different temporal ways. And like you see the later part of the story here, then you go back here, then you come back and rejoin, but then there's a new piece of information in flashback that completely changes. Tarantino is so good at that, that he would be another, like he was someone else we thought about a lot while writing How I Met Your Mother, which is a funny thing to say because Tarantino has a lot more blood and violence in his movies than How I Met Your Mother did. But the storytelling, the daring and the inspiration of his storytelling. And what's insane, Maya, is that somewhere late in the run of How I Met Your Mother, we learned that Quentin Tarantino was an enormous How I Met Your Mother fan. And so it sort of made no sense that he was a How I Met Your Mother fan. And if you watch How I Met Your Mother, you wouldn't think those guys love Quentin Tarantino necessarily. But somehow there was some weird some weird bond between what we were doing and what he was doing. And in several interviews, several different times, including on camera, he said that How I Met Your Mother was like his favorite show or one of his favorite shows, and he watched it start to finish. So that blew our minds. We were like, yeah, that it makes no sense and it makes perfect sense at the same time. So those are some of the people we thought about as their storytelling styles, some of the shows and movies and whatever. Those are a few examples, but across 9 years of writing that show, we of course had many different inspirations and many different people we were trying to rip off in different ways, but while finding our own thing.
Oh, I love that. Um, did you have a favorite episode of How I Met Your Mother?
I have so many for so many different reasons. One that I often like think of really fondly, just because our goal was to do a show like what I just said about Buffy in a way, and Cheers, where it could be very emotional at different times, right? Where we could really embrace that, like, this isn't just jokes. We want people to care about these characters. We want to make you cry. Yes, it's a 22-minute sitcom on CBS on Monday nights, but we want to go there. And one moment I thought that we did that early on was the season one finale episode, where we did this sort of episode that was like the highs and lows of life all through season one. Spoilers, if anyone's hasn't watched How I Met Your Mother that's watching this, but at the end of season one, Ted, Josh Radnor's character, has spent the whole season chasing after Robin, this woman he met who became part of the friend group. They almost got together, then it seemed like maybe it wasn't going to happen. And at the end of season one, he completes his quest of getting, getting with Robin, getting romantically, getting like really starting to be with her. And he has this amazing night with her, and alongside that story, there's been the storyline that Marshall and Lily, the old married couple, right, that everybody can count on, and they're like mom and dad. Ted literally calls them mom and dad in the series. Like in the pilot, he comes, "Mom, Dad, I think I just met the one." That was when you met Robin in the pilot. So they were the core and the rock. They're mom and dad. Nothing ever. You don't have to worry about them. They're going to be great. But they've been having some problems in those later episodes of season one as they head towards talking about getting married, and they wind up kind of having a freak out and a breakup. And Ted comes home from this high point moment of having gotten the girl, and he finds Marshall sitting outside on the front stoop in the rain the next day, and Marshall is holding this returned engagement ring, and Ted knows without words what has happened. And he just goes and sits in the rain, puts his arm around Marshall, and they just sit there in the rain. You kind of pull back, and that's the end of season one. And the reason I like that moment so much is it kind of called our shot, or like staked our claim of like, we are also going to do that move on this show. You know what I mean? And we are also going to do the move where we surprise you with something where it's a little bit heartbreaking. It's the highs and lows, the joys and the sadness of life all at once. And I think that's what I'm proudest of about How I Met Your Mother through the whole series, is the moments we were able to balance those. And that was like a really early, really big moment. We found that ability to balance the highs and the lows. And I always love that last shot of season one. That always gets me, that one.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
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 We were a very emo sitcom, Maya. We were a very emo sitcom.
Yeah.
But I think it's what was good about our show. I think there were other shows that were more like machine gun jokes, brrr, like just like more jokes per minute than us. But I think that you have to find your thing, right? Whether it's on a personal level, or if you're creating a big thing like a show or a band or whatever, you have to find what can we do that other shows or other people might not do exactly the same way. How do we make it distinctive in ours? And I think that for us, for How Much Mother, that was how we did it. We became
Yeah.
our own thing. So that's why I like that moment so much.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Although some people hate it, some people hate that stuff. Some people are like, "I just want your show to be funny. Why are you making me cry?" Like we had plenty of times where people are like yelling at us on the internet, like,
Yeah.
"How did you make me feel something?" I'm like, "No, feeling something's good. I'll
Yeah.
yell at me all you want. I think feeling something is good. I think that's the point of art." So I stand
Yeah.
by it. And I almost always took it as a good sign when people would get upset and yell at us about that kind of stuff. It was like, it means we're making them feel something.
Yeah, definitely.
Better than being boring, right?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I love every episode, and I have two that are always my go-to that always just make me cry from laughing so hard.
Oh, do you remember which ones? I'm so
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
honored that you feel that way. What are
the
they?
pineapple incident.
If you had me name three more or four more, I would have had Pineapple Incident on there too. That
Oh,
was, yeah.
I
I love
love
that
it.
one. I'm so
Yeah.
glad. I'm so glad that one.
Yeah,
Speaking about jumping around in time and doling out information and the Tarantino type of
yeah,
storytelling, that's what that one is. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the episode Murtaugh.
Yeah, the Murtaugh list. I'm
Yeah.
getting too old for this beep. right? I guess
Yeah,
on here we could just curse and say it, but on the show we couldn't.
yeah.
By the way, Maya, that one gets better as you get older. You're too young to fully appreciate how many things you're going to get too old for. That's really funny. I love that you love that one. That's
Yeah,
funny.
I the scene that just uh like always pops into my head is when Barney and Robin are at like that rave and Barney's just hunched over and Robin
Yeah, yeah.
is calling Ted and he says somebody gave me aspirin and I don't think it was aspirin.
Yes, I forgot about that moment. That's so funny.
Yeah.
I do remember loving that. That was really funny. I can't believe I'm sitting here saying on my own show. Yeah, that was a funny one. It seems very arrogant, but it's interesting because we're doing this rewatch podcast. I'll plug two things on this. My book is called That's Not How It Happened. Comes out November 4th. HarperCollins, Hanover Square Press. I would love if anyone listening would check it out. And the second thing I'll plug, and I hope you will check this out, Maya,
Yeah.
is Josh Redder and I are doing this rewatch podcast. We're just at
Yeah.
the beginning of it. We're like only, we're up to like episode 8 or something in season 1. And
Yeah.
it's called How We Made Your Mother, and we have all kinds of guests on and different people from the show, and not on every episode. Sometimes it's just us, but other times it's guests and stuff. And what's so funny is going back to these episodes, and some of them I haven't seen in a really long time. Like I didn't totally remember that moment you just quoted until you just said it. And in season 1, that's 20 years ago now, dude. 20 years. And like some of these were like, man. And Josh and I are like, I forgot about that whole B story in that episode. I forgot that was the episode that had that B story. And it's just really interesting. It's like a funny memory game to go back through. And some things you remember verbatim and you could quote the whole scene almost. And other things you go, I forgot we even did that entire storyline. It's really funny. Talk about getting too old for this mess.
Yeah.
I've forgotten some of what we did on our own TV show. It's really weird.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I've been meaning to I started listening to the podcast and I loved it and then I got distracted with something so I
As
got
you said, I can't take it personally because it's involuntary. What word did you use? Involuntary
yeah, it's
distraction.
unintentional.
Unintentional. That was it. That was better.
Yeah.
Unintentional. That's a better word. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I take no offense at that.
Okay.
Maya, let me ask you this. I was thinking about this. Is this a podcast or is this just on YouTube?
Yeah, this is on YouTube and
I want you to do it as a podcast too. Is it crazy? Can I pitch you that? Put it out there as a podcast too.
yeah.
Yeah? Is it
Yeah,
crazy?
I started releasing like older interviews on Spotify as a podcast, but then
Yeah.
I don't know, I got kind of overwhelmed with like going to that.
You're a one-woman show, so I totally get it. But
Thank
I was
you.
trying to I was walking around today and it was because I had watched some of your stuff on YouTube. I was walking around and I looked it up. I wonder if this is a podcast too, and it wasn't on there for Apple Podcasts. And it was like, I want Maya's show to be on Apple Podcasts. So I'm gonna manifest it into the world. Maybe it will happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
It should be. It would be great if it were. I know it's a lot of extra work. You can't believe you do this. Before we started recording, I was marveling at that you know how to do every part of this. I certainly don't.
Oh, thank you.
We have a wonderful producer of our podcast that like talks to me and Josh like we are 4-year-old children and directs us very carefully what to do, and we still screw it up, and he has to like troubleshoot and like tech manage us. So yeah, respect for all that you do for your own show.
Thank you. Um, so what lessons from your childhood have most impacted your worldview?
That's a great question. I think kindness above all else, kindness and trying to think of other people. My mother was really good at that. She went to others as you want them to do unto you, and she was always very good at that. And she was always like she was a very early on environmentalist. My mother, like it always mattered to her about the environment and that particular cause, and she did a lot of work on that cause in different ways through her life. And it's that idea of trying to think of something beyond yourself. And then I think from my dad, I learned so much about vision and focus and seeing things through. He really did, like I said, he was a writer. He created his own ad agency and had that for almost the length of How I Met Your Mother. It's almost like his ad agency, like in How I Met Your Mother, like 8, 9, 10 year runs. And he had also been like the superstar of every other ad agency he wrote at or was the creative director at. And his laser focus and, borderline, workaholism, let's call it a spade a spade. Like he was definitely workaholic, and I think it was like too much. And at times in my life, I've been that way too. Intense, like I said. But there's a good side to that, right? He wanted to make things the best they could be. And he was willing to sit there and grind it out. I have this image of him in his own little office writing on this little notepad, like not a little, like a long yellow legal pad, and just a billion ideas, billion different versions of whatever ad, whatever slogan, whatever like copy would go with it. All these are ideas for campaigns he was going to pitch that were millions and millions of dollars, campaigns to big car companies, like high pressure things. And I really did see like it doesn't just happen. You have to grind it out. You have to sit there and be that focused. You have to sort of maybe make yourself a little miserable to break through and get to the thing you can really be proud of. And so I think I saw that kind of like writerly, like slightly crazy, but also kind of inspiring laser focus. Like it's always on that edge of whether it's like good or bad, but it's like very, very like that commitment to just like getting it word perfect, getting it the best, just really grinding it out to be the best you can do. I got to see that. I got to see a writer doing that my whole childhood. So it looked intense. And speaking of intense, it looked very intense. It's funny that I saw that and I was like, I want to do that. But I saw that and so I learned that kind of dedication and focus from him. So those were good lessons.
Love that. Yeah. So what has been the biggest obstacle you've overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it was a huge challenge between year 2 and 3 of How I Met Your Mother when my son was born, and he had these huge. We did not know anything was going on. He had these huge medical challenges, right? And we did wind up having this big surgery for him at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. Huge shout out to them for saving his life, and he's 18 now. And trying to balance all of the challenges of being in this children's hospital, which I know you've spent a lot of time the
Yeah.
one in your life where you literally created this show at that hospital, right? Am I right? I understand it
Yeah.
correctly? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the volley where I'm going with this is it was this happened between year 2 and year 3 of How I Met Your Mother. And at a certain point, I had to go back to writing a comedy show, right? While I was like at home, we were living a drama. We were living an
Yeah.
intense medical drama. And then I would sort of like get in the car and drive to a sitcom. And it's that balance of trying to figure that out at that moment in my life, I was still only, what was I, 31 years old or something, 32. I was not that old. Uh, that was huge. That was a huge, huge challenge. And I'd say that all the people that I worked with on How I Met Your Mother, from the cast to Pam Fryman, our director, Caesar Greenberg, our producer, Carter Bays, my co-showrunner, co-creator, and all the writers, everybody, top to bottom, the whole staff, was so supportive of me during that time and gave me the space to figure out how to balance those two things. And then I always feel like the show got a little more emotional and like nuanced, sort of in part because one of the people running it was going through all this stuff, right? And we sort of like it found its way into that show somehow. We didn't literally write a storyline about Marshall Lilly having a medically complicated child or a child that ended up having, intellectual disabilities or anything like. We didn't get like super, super heavy with that. Um, but it was there somehow. Somehow, some of the emotion or the emotional gravity or something was there. And I think overcoming the obstacle meant figuring out how to keep writing and yet let some of what was going on in my life into the writing. And again, like flash forward, 18 years, and now I've spent the last couple of years writing this novel that is entirely about that part of my life, entirely about raising a child who's different and has different challenges. And the way that that sort of informed my work in recent years and like what has meaning to me to write about, it's so huge. It's life altering, and it's really changed me as a writer. It's made me better as a writer, I think. I think it's made me better as a person. So overcoming those obstacles meant, it took a lot of years and a lot of time, and I had so much support to do that. And it's like, it's not like you ever overcome it. It's like you're always, right? You know this. You're always day to day. You're like working on it day to day. But you learn, right? You learn and you grow and you evolve and you learn how to embrace those challenges and make them part of your story. And yeah, I would say that's the biggest one, but it's been such a gift in so many ways.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So what genre of movie would your life story be told as?
I'd say that exact mix I just talked about, where somehow you're mixing in the cauldron together all these really hard things with absolute ridiculousness, like Robin Sparkles and the Murtaugh List and the Pineapple Incident, stirred together in a giant cauldron with like going through those weeks at the Children's Hospital and going through all the different challenges we've had. And you sort of mix it all together into this sort of like bittersweet, poignant, funny, dark, light, like everything at once, everything all at once stew. I would say like that's all I know how to write now is like that tone. I don't think I'm just a great like one-off joke writer anymore. When I write something, there's always something has a little more gravity to that. I'm almost 50 and maybe that's just part of getting older. But I think what interests me is when something can be funny and also make me cry at the same time. And I like to think that the best of How I Met Your Mother did that. I hope my book does that. And like whenever I find a show or a movie that does that, those are my favorite. Those are the ones that I always hold on to. And I just think it's such an amazing thing if you can capture that much of the bandwidth of life, like the full spectrum of life. If you can laugh and cry at the same piece of art and do both equally hard,
Yeah.
do both with equal intensity, like that is to me that's the gold standard. And yeah, I would hope that would be the tone that would be the genre of my life, but I don't know what it's called, what you would call that genre. A dramedy. It's a dramedy.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love when like shows and movies can like perfectly mix those two things together, which I do think How I Met Your Mother did.
Oh, thank you.
So,
At our best, I think we did some of that, and
yeah,
that was always my favorite moments, more so than
yeah,
just the purely comedy episodes. I always feel like those are the ones that stay with me the most of our show or any show.
yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. So I am pop culture obsessed and go in stages of shows that I can't stop watching. Is there a show that you are currently obsessed with?
Oh boy, I've been obsessed with Severance. I've really enjoyed Severance. Just in the sense of like at 3 in the morning, I'm thinking, you wake up and you're like thinking about the Severance episode that you watched. I think that thing of getting a show that can get in your brain that deeply and just worm in there and just like I can't stop thinking about I'm trying to like you're coming up with theories about it and you notice online that there's chatter about it. There's some people yelling about it. There's some people upset. There's other people who are like, it's genius. And it's so rare. It's such a noisy, crowded landscape, pop culture now, right? It's hard for anything to pop. So it's just like everyone's talking about that show, and what an accomplishment for this like high concept, really weird but awesome show to crack through like that. That was the one that I was just you're jealous of it. You're like, I want to be working on something like that. But that was my most recent obsession, I would say. And then also, it's funny, we're for a comfort viewing, talking about rewatching comfort shows. This isn't a rewatch because I didn't never watch it start to finish, but and this is way before your time, but the show MASH. Do you know the show MASH that was
Yeah.
about, yeah, it was in the 70s, but it was about the Korean War, in the 50s. It was a period piece. It's a comedy set in the middle of a war, in the middle of a medical unit helping the wounded in this war in Korea. And I've really enjoyed diving into that show, which I had never done a deep dive into, but someone that my father-in-law, who unfortunately passed away last year, he was one of his favorite shows, and so my wife and I decided as a tribute to him, we would just dive into one of his favorite shows because neither of us had ever really like done the full big dive. And so I watched like 5 seasons of MASH every episode over the last year, and we'll keep chipping away at it. And it's just talk about a show that found comedy and drama and this sort of danger. There's like danger in the air of that show. It's a comedy. There's a laugh track. They're making jokes as they're doing this sort of meatball surgery on people in coming out of battle. But every now and again, there's an episode that really reminds you, like, no, they're in real danger here, and there's real like their people are dying, and like this is really serious stuff. And it's a really great show that an earlier comedy that went there, right? That was blending that level of drama and that level of comedy. So that's been really cool to watch and just go, wow. In the 1970s, when before I was that show started before I was born, and they were doing this really sophisticated blend of comedy and drama. Really cool.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just started watching the final season of the show You on Netflix.
Yeah, I watched some of season one and I somehow never ended up going back to it. I liked it. I liked
Yeah.
season one. I don't know why I didn't go back to it. Maybe it was just it's a really intense show.
Yeah,
It's
it is.
creepy, but it's
Yeah,
very engaging. Yeah.
yeah,
Is it good? Does it hold up? Did you like it
definitely.
all the way to the
Yeah,
end?
I
Cool. All
did.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah, that's a cool.
I still have I think I'm like on the third episode of season 5. Um
Yeah.
and yeah, it's so good. And I love how they're making this season like a little bit different from all the other seasons.
I love when a show can pivot like that. And
Yeah.
even episode to episode. Like it's just exciting when you
Yeah.
think you know what's going to happen and then somehow it shifts and now it's something else. It's hard to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm with you on that. That's a good
Definitely.
move. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah. Um, yeah, and then I've been like rewatching different episodes of another one of my comfort shows, which is The New Adventures of Old Christine.
Oh my gosh, that's right. That aired on CBS at the same time as we did. So I had some awareness of it. I bet I was at different like promotional events with the with the cast and people of that show. Although I don't know if I ever really met them, but yeah, they were like briefly contemporaries of ours there on CBS. And I will admit I never really watched it. But I love her. It seemed like
Yeah,
a good show. Yeah, that's
yeah,
cool. Oh,
it's
that's
so good.
interesting. It's a deep
Yeah,
cut.
yes. Yeah, I recently realized it's like all my favorite shows and my comfort shows that I just rewatch. My mom introduced me to all of them. Um,
Oh, that's nice. It's like a bond. It's like a
yeah,
mom bond. The
yeah,
comfort shows are usually the mom bond ones. That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, so yeah, I realized that she's the one who introduced me to all of them. So
I
I,
think I could say the same. I think my mother probably turned me on to watching Cheers, and I remember going way back and now sounding even older than I did talking about MASH. There was a show in the category of like British comedy. Monty Python launched John Cleese to do this show called Faulty Towers. Have you ever heard about the show? It's like this ridiculous show. It's very short-lived. I think there were just a couple seasons or one season. There was like maybe 13 episodes total, unless I'm getting that wrong. But I remember being a kid, and my mother loved this. My mother, it would air on PBS because it was British. It was like a BBC show, and it would air on like Channel 13 on, old school TV. And my mother would watch this on Sunday night. And I got exposed to like watching John Cleese from Monty Python's Flying Circus, and like that got me into watching and consuming Monty Python and all their movies. And like those moments, those things that your parents, right?
yeah,
If you're close with your mom or if you're close to your dad,
yeah,
the way the level of influence, right?
yeah,
It's intense. Like your worldview or your comedic point of view, it's
yeah,
those are big moments when your mom or somebody turns you on to those things, right?
yeah,
Those formative, they stay
yeah.
with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my mom and my sister and I are all very close. So
That's
yeah,
nice.
yeah. So she
What are your other
introduced,
shows that you bond with them about? Like, are there other ones that are your like specific mom or sister shows?
yeah, yeah, my mom introduced me, well, she introduced me to How I Met Your Mother
I
and
love your mother already. She's clearly a gem. Please say
yeah,
hi to
yes,
her.
she is. I will. Yeah, she introduced me to How I Met Your Mother, Friends, Will and Grace,
Yep.
uh, White Collar, Royal Pains, which are all shows I just rewatch over and over,
Yeah.
and The New Adventures of Old Christine. Um,
She has
and
good taste.
she does, yeah.
Yeah. Those are all good shows.
Yeah.
Friends was huge
And
to me too, right? I mean, Friends was a big one. I was in college watching Friends every week, like appointment television, like sitting down and watching it pre-streaming, pre-DVR. You
yeah,
sat down and you watched it air and you were excited. You made the time to do it. And Friends
yeah.
was definitely that for me.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, yeah, I actually when you mentioned John Cleese, it was I know he was in like he had a role in Will and Grace for a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and he was so funny in it. I
He's
remember
always funny.
seeing him, yeah, seeing him in rewatching a movie and that he was in. I kind of forgot about, and I was like, I was staring at him like, I know who that is. Why does he look so familiar? And then I realized
He
I
played a ghost in Harry Potter, so he might have popped up there for you. Did you ever see A Fish Called Wanda? This movie he wrote and
I
co-starred
didn't
in.
I
It's
didn't.
hilarious. Watch A Fish Called Wanda. It's John Cleese wrote it. I think it got nominated for best screenplay. I don't remember if he won that or not, but it's like it was a comedy. It was the rare comedy that got all of these Oscar nominations because it was so smart and funny. And this actor Kevin Kline, who's fantastic in everything, he won an Oscar for a comedic role. He won Best Supporting Actor for playing this insane character called Otto in A Fish Called Wanda. That's another huge influence on me, that movie. So check that out if you like John Cleese at all. He's hilarious in that movie. So that
Oh,
whole movie's great.
oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Late 80s.
Yeah. Oh,
Late
cool.
80s, very funny, sort of like a heist robbery kind of movie in some ways, but it's just it's hilarious comedy. So
I love that.
recommend that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out. I remember when I finally realized I was like, oh yeah, he was in Will and Grace, and my mom looked at me and she was like, well, actually, first he was Monty Python.
Yeah, yeah. He has some other bigger claims to fame than his guest roles on Will and Grace.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
was like, well, he wasn't. I was like, if he was in Will and Grace, so I love him because he
Yeah,
was in
yeah.
Will
Well,
and
then
Grace.
you'll love him even more. If you love him in that, you're gonna love him in A Fish Called Wanda.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny because I'm sure in some ways he's best known to certain younger people as like nearly headless Nick. It's like no, he's not just a headless ghost. He did like one of the defining comedy shows of all and movie series of Monty Python of all time. But however you get introduced to someone, it works. It's good, right? Because then you can
Yeah.
dive into their past a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
know, yeah, I always joke with my family that there are certain people that even if I haven't like really seen like their work, if they've guest starred in like one or two of my favorite shows, like I
Yeah. You always
automatically love
remember.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So
Totally, it's huge, yeah, and those things pop, those things
yeah.
those things matter. Like we sometimes I'll talk to people that were on How I Met Your Mother. Like I remember I talked to Bob Odenkirk as he was closing out Better Call Saul, and he's like, I still have How I Met Your Mother fans come up to me fairly often and say, "You were Marshall's jerk boss and How I Met Your Mother," and he's like, "I've done a lot of other things, besides that." But he was like laughing. He's just like, I get recognized for that sometimes, and people lead with that. I'm like, yeah,
Oh,
you've done a lot bigger things than those few guest roles on our show. But he's so funny and he's just great and like whatever. He said it positively. He was like, it's cool to have a career where you can get recognized for a lot of different things from like
yeah.
different sections of society and the world and ages
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah, it
Yeah.
means
Oh,
you've had a good career.
yeah. Yeah. I love that. So I just have two more questions for you.
Sure.
Um, So, what small things bring you joy on a daily basis?
I would say I would say watching The Simpsons lately with my daughter because we're on a show about pop culture. I will share a pop culture thing. My daughter, I would say trying maybe overly aggressively trying to like comedy educate my daughter, because she's like this little funny writer girl and she loves making stuff up. She loves being silly. So I've like had this sort of like little side subtle comedy course I've been sort of giving her where like I got her into the Far Side cartoons by Gary Larson at a young age, which are wonderful if you haven't read them. The Far Side, so many different books, but you can get like the history of the Far Side. It's like this tome, like this big box set with three big books. That's sort of like most of his work of all these really funny cartoons, a lot of which are like really sophisticated and about science and like and she like I think it helped her. She has a little science brain too, and she's really gotten into science. But I think she was reading those at a very young age, and then I sort of like have been slowly like adding things in to sort of like influence her comedic sensibility. And the latest one is The Simpsons, and she's like so into it. She's like, I'm Lisa Simpson because she loves school and she loves like justice and things being right. And she's like, I'm definitely Lisa Simpson. And for her birthday, I had her like made into a Simpsons character, as a painting. There's
Yeah.
companies that will turn you like you send a picture, and so she has her own Simpsons character that's up on her wall. So I'd say sharing comedy things with her brings me daily joy. And then with my son, just like every day, we're either playing guitar and singing a song, or he's on the drums, I'm on a guitar through an amp, and just making music with my son or writing with my daughter. Those are some of my greatest joys, like day to day. And it reminds me that the act of doing the creative thing, not the final product, the act of doing it is where the joy is. And sitting there and just writing with my daughter, like, working on this book for a couple of years and not knowing if the book would ever go anywhere, and having moments of like, I wonder if I'm going to finish this, or I'm going to get like blah, blah, blah. And thank God I did. And it is going somewhere. It's going to be out in the world. But I loved sitting there writing with her. It was just so joyful to be near somebody that's just then she was 8 and seeing the pureness, the purity of she just likes writing. She just likes making things up. It's not because she wants to go get it published. She just likes doing it. And it's so nice to remember that that's where it all starts. So that's the joy for me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love inspiring and motivational quotes. And this week, my favorite quotation is we all have a past. We've all made bad choices. None of us are perfect. But every day we get a fresh start to be a better person than we were yesterday.
Hmm.
Is there a quotation that has inspired you lately?
For some reason, what's popping into my head is this a funny version of a quotation that Carter and I put up on the put up on the wall during in our wall on How I Met Your Mother, because it was something we said so often, and it's the opposite of inspiring, which is why we had it made into this like it was like something you'd see in your grandma's house where it's like a knitted like what am I trying to say embroidery, like a little like it's like written like it would say home sweet home or home is where the heart is, like one of those type of things.
Yeah.
And what we had put up on the walls over our door in our office in How I Met Your Mother just said, writing is hard. And it's the opposite of inspiring. But it was wonderful because it was just this simple statement that was just like, because had so much output to do on that show. It's like, 22 episodes or often 24 episodes a year. And sometimes you just felt like, how are we going to keep up with this? How are we going to do this? And you'd look up on the wall and would say, writing is hard. And it always made us laugh because it looked like it should have said home sweet home or something in on your grandma's wall. But it said, writing is hard. And there was something I loved about that that has stuck with me. That's like because it acknowledges like this fundamental truth, and yet going back to what I just said about my daughter, like sitting there and watching her just write her story, and there's actually an ease to writing when you're just loving doing it and you're not imagining the result, you're not trying to hit a deadline. And so I always feel like writing is hard, but my daughter also reminded me what it looks like when writing is easy. So I find myself thinking about those two things a lot lately. Even
Oh,
though that's not really answering your question, that was what popped into my head. It
I
was sort of like
love that.
uh, you need that when you're writing stuff, it can be lonely, and I think you do come up with these little mantras and these little things in your head that you're aiming at. And I think my new one is like writing is easy when you're not focusing too much on the result. And that's what I found myself thinking a lot about just watching like my daughter's creative spirit come out. So I've that's been inspirational to me lately.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved yours, by the way. That's a great quote. That's very true. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing it with me.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, that was my final question for you.
Thank you,
Um,
Maya. It was so nice to talk to you. Thanks for inviting me on. I
Thank
really appreciate
you.
it.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining me. I've had the best time talking with you. You've made my day.
It's been a delight. You've made my day. Send me your song. Send me a couple songs if you can. I don't know if on the YouTube page you have like a notes section or something you can put up, or different things you can put up in the comments or something. But put this up on your this episode. Put up links to your songs if you have them and stuff because we talked about them, and I want your fans to see them too. I know maybe you've already done that, but I certainly want.
Thank
Oops,
you.
sorry. I certainly want to hear them.
Oh, thank
You're
you.
inspiring to me and everything you've done, and I know a little bit about your journey and where the show came from, and the fact that you're able to sort of put out in the world what your passion is and connect with people is so cool, and where it all began and where it's all gone. So respect to you, Maya.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you.
Totally.
Um,
Well,
and
thanks for having me.
yeah, and thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. I'm
Thank
so glad
you.
we got to know each other,
Me
not just
too.
on tweets or something.
Yeah, me
Good to talk
too.
to
And that's a wrap on today's edition of the latest
you.
with Maya.